Elias had always loved collecting old electronics. There was something about the whirring, the crackling, the nostalgic hum that made him feel like he was living in another time. So when he found the old TV at a yard sale for $5, he felt like he'd struck gold. The television was ancient, one of those bulky box sets with knobs instead of buttons, and a faded wooden frame that smelled like dust and mildew. Its screen was grimy and scratched, but something about it called to him. Maybe it was the way it looked out of place, like it didn't belong in this world. The old man running the yard sale had been all too eager to get rid of it. Elias still remembered the man's crinkled eyes as he muttered, "Doesn't work right. Static most of the time. Only weird stuff on after 3 a.m. He had shrugged it off as the ramblings of an old man. Besides, the weird stuff was what made it cool. When Elias finally set it up in his room that night, the TV buzzed to life with a screen full of static, just as promised. He fiddled with the knobs, but all he could get was more fuzz. Eventually he gave up and went to bed, leaving the TV's quiet hiss to fill the darkness. He wasn't sure what woke him. Maybe it was the cold draft that had crept into the room, or the flickering glow of the television. He groaned, rolling over to glance at the time, 3:02 a.m. That's when he noticed the TV wasn't showing static anymore. Elias sat up, rubbing his eyes to make sure he wasn't dreaming. The screen was no longer a storm of black and white fuzz. Instead, a grainy image flickered to life. It was a boy, standing alone in the middle of a road. The scene was in black and white, like an old home video, but something about it felt wrong. The boy looked familiar. Elias squinted, his heart beginning to race as he recognized the messy hair and hoodie. It was him. Elias stared at the screen, a cold chill crawling down his spine. What the hell? On the screen, the version of him took a step forward, looking around as if lost. The road was empty, the sky above overcast and ominous. Elias's stomach twisted. He didn't remember being in any place like that, let alone filming it. The boy on the screen turned his head, staring directly at the camera, directly at him. For a moment their eyes locked, and Elias's breath caught in his throat. It was as if the TV version of him could see him watching. A high-pitched whine pierced through the speakers, and the screen abruptly cut to static. Elias's heart was pounding now. He grabbed the remote, clicking the TV off, and tossed it on the floor. There was no way he was getting back to sleep after that. The next morning, the whole thing felt like a bad dream. He convinced himself it had been some kind of glitch, maybe an old recording that had gotten warped. But deep down, a part of him couldn't shake the eerie feeling. He avoided looking at the TV all day, its blank screen seeming to mock him. That night, sleep didn't come easy. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that image of himself on the road. The confusion, the fear in his own eyes. It was too real. When he finally drifted off, it was well past midnight. But again, something woke him. The TV was on again. Static filled the room, the soft hiss like a whisper in the darkness. Elias's mouth went dry as he checked the time, 3:03 a.m. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to look at the screen. It wasn't static anymore, it was him again. This time the boy on the screen stood at the entrance of an old, abandoned house. The door creaked open, and Elias watched as his doppelganger stepped inside, disappearing into the shadows. "No," Elias whispered, shaking his head. "This can't be real." The screen flickered, and for a moment he thought he saw something move in the background. A figure? No, it had to be his imagination. But the boy on the screen stopped, turning back toward the camera. This time his eyes were wide with terror. Something was chasing him. Elias shot out of bed, frantically turning the TV off again. His hands were shaking, his heart thundering in his chest. He wasn't dreaming. This was real. And whatever was happening on the screen, whatever that thing was coming for him. The next night, he told himself he wouldn't watch. He'd unplug the TV, throw it out if he had to. But when the clock struck 3 a.m., the TV flickered on again by itself. This time, Elias's double was back in the middle of the road. He was running, panting, glancing over his shoulder. The black and white world was spinning in chaos, the air thick with fog. And then, out of the mist, the shadow appeared. Tall, dark, featureless, it was no longer just a blur in the background. The thing was real, and it was coming for him. Elias couldn't breathe. His hands were clammy as he watched the boy stumble, fall, and scream silently at the screen, reaching out as though begging for help. Suddenly the screen cut to static once more. Elias's heart raced, his eyes fixed on the television. But this time, the static didn't last long. The screen flickered again, and Elias's blood ran cold. The image had changed. The road was gone, the house was gone. The figure chasing him was gone. Now it was just Elias's room.
His bed, his desk, his closet, and him.
He was on the screen, staring at himself from behind, the camera creeping closer, closer to where he sat.
"Elias!" a voice hissed from the static, barely audible. "Turn around!"
Elias's body stiffened. He could feel it, the presence behind him. Just like the boy on the screen, something was coming for him. The next morning, Elias's parents found his room empty. The TV was still on, but it showed nothing but static.
No matter how much they tried to turn it off, it stayed that way.
A week later, a local news story broke. Teenager missing without a trace. And when his parents looked closer at the flickering static on that cursed TV, they thought, just for a moment, they saw their son's face, trapped in the endless snow of static, silently screaming for help. If you enjoyed this story and would like to read more just like it, check out the description below to purchase volumes 1 and 2 of Creepy Chronicles, a collection of scary short stories. I'm offering a digital bundle of both volumes for only $10. With this, you'll also get a digital file of all illustrations from the books, a $200 hotel savings card, and a voucher for a 3-night stay in either Las Vegas or Orlando, Florida. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow to keep up with all things relating to Grace and Todd.